Well, welcome along to our second session, Cloud, Green or Grey. All over the world this year, there have been some horrific reminders of the effects of climate change every day in the news. There's no doubt of the need of the content industry to play its part getting those emissions down. But incredibly, industry analysts say that the media and entertainment industry is not even on the list of the top industries who are taking action. Not even in the top 10. Yet the media is also the industry with the greatest potential to influence others. We have a lot to do. A report last year by Swedish tech firm Seen This estimates that the media industry's global emissions are equivalent to the aviation industry. They also estimate, and this is useful, they also estimate that every time a gigabyte of data is transferred through networks, up to 1 kilogram of carbon is released, depending on where and how it's processed. So what we're doing with our data matters. Are we processing and moving the data more than we need to? Is outsourcing your data to someone else, i.e. the cloud, the greener option, or is this a grey area? Our guests this afternoon, Serge Van Herck, CEO of EVS, Rohan Mitchell, Group ESG Director at EMG, Thomas Mueller, CTO at Qvest Group, Anshul Kapoor, who you met earlier, Head of Media Broadcasting Solutions at Google Cloud, and Eirik Nakken, Director of Technology at NEP Norway. So thank you all very much for coming along. So look, this is a messy, complex subject, difficult to fix. Everyone wants someone else to fix it. There are no industry standards and methods, even though we're quite good at standards, I was going to say, but maybe we're not. But let's try and get some consensus this afternoon. So I think let's just get a snapshot of where each of you is on this. So I'm going to go down the line. Serge, I'm going to start with you. Give us a 1 or 2 line summary of what your carbon reduction strategy is, and maybe some bullet points about what you're doing to achieve it.
Thank you for that question. So, what are we doing? Well, this year we have, for the second time in a row, made our sustainability report.
Okay.
So, at least we start talking about it. We start thinking about it. So, last year, for the first time, indeed, we measured our carbon footprint. So we understand what we do, we understand more or less how much it is,
okay.
And we see where we have to improve it. So
we'll find out how you might have done that later, but okay, yeah. That's interesting.
So we are at the beginning of the cycle to really take action. So now we know that 60% of our, or even a bit more, comes from the way our customers are using our equipment.
Okay.
So we know that with that information we can take action, and we can mainly also look to our engineering team to help in the future reduce how our customers are using our equipment, or make sure that our future equipment is reducing less. So that's for the moment one of our biggest focuses, as we know that that is the biggest part of our carbon footprint.
Okay. Rohan, this is your job, so I hope you're doing something about it.
Thanks, Tony. So we've started our journey looking at our carbon emissions, and across our sort of different business activities. I'd say the OB outside broadcast market, the largest part of that is business travel, crew travelling to site. So
okay.
with the changes in production of how it's working, going to more of a remote module, it's bringing some benefits. But we would say that the reduction plan that we're trying to do is we're looking at how do you rationalise and how do you make some of our production more sustainable.
Yeah. Okay. Thomas.
Okay. Qvest, as a system provider, we don't have that big carbon footprint because most of our people are consultants. Yeah. So carbon footprint is from traveling and all this kind of stuff. Nonetheless. All of our IT is in the cloud. We started the journey with sustainability 2 years ago because we were expecting that our customers are asking for it. Indeed, they are not asking for it right now, but we start the ISO 14001 certification, which means the environmental management system. And that's what we're doing basically.
And I think it's worth just saying, so just tell us a bit about what Qvest does, because you're a solutions provider for other people as opposed to a production solution.
So I'm CTO of Qvest Group. Qvest Group is worldwide and acting a solution provider, a system integrator for media and entertainment industry, starting from large projects with Disney to being a sports group, Sky Germany, till TV and Set in New Zealand and Nine Networks.
Right, thank you very much. Anshul?
Yeah, I think at Google, obviously, being in a data center, creating a lot of data centers for our own consumption, but also for our customers, clearly we're trying to do a lot, but at the same time, obviously, it's always room for improvement. So I think since the start of Google, since 2007, it's always focused on efficiency and how much more you can do with the data centers. But if you look since 2020, 2021, I think we've been on buying 100% renewable energy in some ways. So if you look, we were actually in some ways focused on that. But now I think a couple of years ago, we announced our new initiative to go completely across the supply chain to go net zero by 2030. So I think quite ambitious target for sure, but definitely something it's important.
Okay, well, I mean, that certainly sets it out. That's clear. Eirik?
Yes. So
What's happening in Norway? What do you do?
So we're also a production service provider, but we're also delivering data center services, centralized production, these type of things. So as NEP in Global, we initiated a worldwide project called Project Earth a couple of years ago, where we kind of put the focus on carbon footprint and sustainable productions. In Norway, we've seen requests coming from the customers that we should be certified and should have a better way of documenting how we work on sustainability. So we got the Eco Lighthouse, which is kind of similar to ISO 14001 or something. In 21, so a couple of years ago. There is also this Nordic initiative, which is a bit similar to the We Are Albert initiative on kind of measuring carbon footprint in production.
Okay, for people who aren't aware, the Albert initiative in the UK is a way of certifying productions and the carbon footprint of each production. There's a whole protocol attached to that. So, okay, so that's the Nordic equivalent, right?
So there is a similar one that was initiated in the Nordics from Cicero, which is a center for international climate research, to build similar technologies or ways of measuring your carbon footprint, like we're Albert. So we're taking a part of that as well.
Thank you for that summary. Okay. Now, each of you represents a different part of the process and the sector. The title of the session was Cloud, Green or Grey. So, gloves on, here we go. Cloud. Is cloud the green answer to, should we just be moving all our digits there, all our processing? You've got it all sorted for us, Anshul, right?
No, there is no grey sky outside today. So cloud is not the only green answer, but definitely not. And I think cloud can't solve all the environmental problem. But not just speaking from Google, but across the industry, I think there's a lot of this is important because the amount of processing of data that is happening in data centers across the world.
But there's still a temptation, isn't there, to kind of go, okay, well, I can have all my processing here on-prem. What a nightmare having to try and make that carbon neutral. I'll just get Google to do all of that for me and give me a certificate.
Yeah, there are customers who are doing that. But
right,
again,
okay. So you're making it easy for them.
But you can't, we can only do part of the processing and simplify that. You can't do, like, as you were mentioning, all of us are sitting across the value chain. Cloud is one element of it in some ways.
Yep. So, Thomas, you've moved all your servers into the cloud. Was that to outsource your carbon emissions, or what was your motivation there?
Carbon emission, of course, is something we have in mind with that, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so it's not, I think we have just one file server left with 1,300 people across more than 20 offices, so which is quite good. We still have network and laptops, of course, which is also emission, yeah. And but reason was also new work, working from home, reducing traveling, and this was, I think, one of the biggest things what we have considered to do that, yeah.
Just while we're on cloud, we'll come back to the other options in a moment. But I'm just trying to connect this to our first conversation about AI, because you can only do AI in the cloud, right? So cloud has got, if we're going to implement AI and make that part of our value chain, then we've got to involve cloud, haven't we?
No.
Oh?
No.
Tell us more.
No. If you talk about AI, it doesn't mean automatically in the cloud.
Okay.
So you can do that on-prem, as we say. So interestingly enough, we launched like 2 years ago our first AI service called XtraMotion in the cloud.
Yep.
The feedback from the customers was, oh, this is great, but we like to have it on-prem. And we have now launched XtraMotion Edge. So, and that's with a solution AI-based, but on-prem, not in the cloud.
But surely that's going to involve an enormous amount of processing.
Well, it's with a GPU, but it's made efficient, very efficient, and it really works very well and gives great results. And it's definitely not using more energy than what it would be in the cloud, because it's the same kind of processing that you use in the cloud as on-prem.
Okay, interesting. Thomas?
Yeah. So I have a slightly different opinion, because of course you can do stuff with AI, TensorFlow, everything on your local CPU.
Yeah.
That's not an issue. We do that since 2015, but the people are talking now about generative AI, and what they mean in the first lane is large language models, which means trillions of data. And we have done, so my point in Qvest is also strategic, and I've done in 2015 where's the company is going. And this was also for our clients, IP transformation. IP transformation enables cloud enables AI, and nobody understands the last thing, because why? But you need the data. Without the data, you can't do anything with it. And if you even look into Green Software Foundation, the upcoming software languages like Python, is with AI, it has a renaissance. Python compared to C++, it's 27,000 times ineffective. Yeah? Docker, Kubernetes, all this stuff is all frameworks. They all need energy at the end of the stuff. Yeah? Google, of course, or let's say, it's the cloud green or gray. For the hyperscalers, at least Microsoft, Google, Amazon, I can say, okay, they have on a PUU, as a power usage efficiency quotation, from 1.05 something. A normal data center is 1.5, and you can't reach that in a local broadcast. It's impossible. Yeah, the only thing what you can do is get sustainable energy, free energy. Yeah? But you can't do this not in the cloud. Yeah? ChatGPT without cloud, where's the data from?
Yeah.
Just, I think, maybe also a little bit, I think and connecting the two topics, AI, I think the two parts of it. One is training, like millions and billions of, and for that you need huge amount of compute, and that cloud is. But then there's the inference element that you were talking about. That can be done. I mean, if you have a Nest doorbell or Alexa at home, as soon as you arrive, it tells you this person has. So it is using machine learning.
So if I've understood you correctly, you're saying that the training element, where it's scraping all the data, that's got to be cloud. But then once it's got its algorithms, that's when it could be
utilized.
Could be on-prem, if I've got that right as a creative. You've been nodding furiously at the end, Eirik, as Thomas was talking. What's your position on whether you move everything to the cloud or not, or what works best in your scenario?
So I think for us, there is a difference between public and private cloud.
Okay.
Public cloud like Google, Amazon, Azure, these are built for compute in a certain way. In the private cloud, where you host your infrastructure, maybe on a central location in a data center, these type of things, you're more open to use other types of processing than CPU, GPU-based processing, which also could have an efficiency on how you process your signals. And at least within the productions that we often handle, which are larger scale productions, you need all the video and audio signals to be in sync, synchronized, and you don't tolerate latency to a large degree, which also affects the choices you make if it's public, private, on-prem, off-prem, these type of things. So it's all about kind of finding the right tool for the job, and sometimes and for some productions it might be public cloud, others might be private or...
But is this a sense that sort of public cloud has to be all things to all people, whereas if you're going to have a sort of private cloud or your network and your data center to do essentially broadcast tasks, you can design it to be sort of tuned to that more specifically? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and you're more open to use other types of equipment than CPU and servers and these type of things. So like FPGAs or ASICs, or which might be more power efficient on processing signals than CPUs are at the moment.
Okay, so now as a creative, FPGA. See if I get this right. Field Programmable General Array.
Gate array.
Gate array. Thank you. Eirik, what is that? Why is it important and why is it useful?
So over the years we've designed circuits to do certain processing and certain types of logical or mathematical operations. To begin with, we designed those specifically for the task that they were supposed to do, and we mass-produced them and integrated them in our products. FPGAs are similar, but they are field programmable, which means you can upload the logics after they've been manufactured. So you can change the way that these logics are supposed to work.
So you can tune your chips to how you need them to best work for you.
You can build your circuit designs after you've kind of added them to your
And is
application.
Can Google do that, or is that a problem in the cloud for Google?
No, I think it's a different way, right? I think to doing things, and not just Google, other clouds. There's a trend also with using GPUs, and yes, I agree. There's a shortage of GPUs in general across the industry, but GPU is graphical processing. There's a lot of parallel processes at the same time, so the capacity you can do things, and that's why it's used a lot in machine learning training right now. So it's doing a lot of parallel processes at the same time with this efficient speed. That is where GPUs differentiate. And yes, there are applications where GPUs will be better, and there'll be applications where other tools can be used.
Okay. Interesting, quite theoretical. I want to just come back a little bit more back to real world just for a minute. But I think that's an important distinction about the ability to do stuff on-prem and then really tune it like a Formula One kind of on-prem scenario for yourself. But it's not as simple, is it, as cloud or on-prem, because there's other ways of working, right? And so, I mean, I know both of your outside broadcast companies will be doing a lot of remote and so on. So, Rohan, what you find, how's remote working for us in terms of being green?
Well, just one of the points we're talking about, just about the cloud. I was in a really interesting steerco last week, and they were saying about there was like 3 things you should look at if you're going into the cloud. First of all, host in a low carbon country. So if you move from Ireland to Norway, the actual energy that they're creating from that country, you have low carbon countries. That's a huge saving you can do already, and you can just ask your client to do that.
Easy win.
So, and I wanted to pass that on because I think some of these, the good thing about these forums is getting ideas and passing them on to people. Say, look, that's you're going to find efficiencies doing that. You'll become more sustainable by that simple ask. So you can ask your service providers can we host in a low carbon country?
Or in a cold country.
Yeah.
That helps a bit, right? Is that right, Anshul?
Yeah.
Not necessarily. You could be in Chile where the sun shines like 14, 15 hours.
Okay, right. So it's not just about the cooling.
No.
Right.
But I think regarding, if we talk about cloud, and we've been talking about private networks, the way that the industry has gone to a more remote production model, it has had benefits. We've had our remote operation centres in service for 3 or 4 years, and for our production partners and our clients, they've had real benefits because now we've just released a new series of purpose-built remote vehicles, and they're able to service, a really simplified production or a larger one. But we will just. It's more of an acquisition truck, to be honest. And it's like, well, we'll just remote that back into your own premises or into somebody else's or our own. And people are working smarter, and they know, right, okay, well, we know that our production teams, they're in. You've seen the migration of that through other sports, and our clients are looking at that, for, tier one sports, not everyone is going to site. And, that has a real benefit on the overall emissions for that production.
Okay, so a lot there to unpack. We've talked a few times actually about business travel being one of the biggest things, crew travel. I guess if people are working remotely or working at home, then you don't have catering, so other things start falling away as well. But would you dare go fully cloud and not have anything on location? Would you do that for your clients?
Well, we're a business solutions and systems company, so we will. What the client wants, we will make it happen. That's where it is. I think people, our clients have become much more able to actually to do these types of productions.
Yeah.
They're much more. They feel safe in that. Whereas 5-6 years ago, they're all proof of concepts. No one really wanted to take the leap, and now. Because of what happened 2 or 3 years ago, we're like that. Everyone's okay. We'll just do it, and then that's giving more opportunities to cover lower tier sports. We could do a 4-year ISE, a large international sporting event, or a single camera tier 3 sports. That's just goes on the internet. It gives that the capacity to do that now.
And what about the EVS position on this, Serge? Because EVS has obviously built its business on being a hardware company. There is a sense of relief for us creatives when we walk into an OB truck and see a reassuring blue box sat there. Where are you going on this?
Well, let me first make that clear. We are not a hardware company. We have 20% of our engineers doing hardware and 80% doing software.
Okay.
So there is a lot of value on that on that blue box, which is software.
Yeah.
And so we're designing our software in such a way that it can be deployed on any type of computer, our own, on commercial off-the-shelf, private or public cloud. So that's our idea. So definitely we are neutral when it comes to deployment.
Yep.
But allow me to come back and challenge an idea that I heard here before, which is that cloud is net zero emission. We've been talking this year about what will be for EVS our 2030 objectives when it comes to ESG, and more specifically about carbon emission. And I said, well, why don't we go net zero? And I got a wave, and I have some colleagues here who are part of that wave, who came over me and said, "Oh, that's unimaginable, that's unacceptable, that's greenwashing." And I said, "Well, others do that." And then they say, "Yeah, but they're planting trees. That's not the right thing to approach. How you approach this, because at the end you can plant a lot of trees, but still emit a lot. That's not the point. So you really have to think in a different way." And that's why we're saying we're not going net zero, but we are helping to reduce it. So it was an interesting discussion we had within the team. And by the way, we have, out of the 600 colleagues, about 30 which are in an ESG group. And a lot of young colleagues are in that group and are very clear about greenwashing.
Of course, one of the problems here is measurement, supply chains, proof, certificates, because there'll be, well, look, you're a supplier to, some of the people sat here. If they're asking you to certify your carbon and then you're going to the people that are supplying you with everything and asking them to certify it, how can we be sure, right? There's no standards here. I mean, isn't just simply the problem we don't know and we can't prove it?
Well, the discussions that we have with certain customers is going like this. Well, with your equipment on site, at least we know how much it is. We know, we measure, and when talking about FPGAs, we can demonstrate that we use less than when you use other type of technologies.
Because that was a critical point, isn't it? That the FPGAs can be programmed to do the same task for much less energy consumption than standard generic chips. Basically, to use layman's terms. Right, okay, Rohan.
I think, and we're going through this at the moment, the supply chain, when we're looking at this, we go, okay, how do we start to measure it? It's a huge, complex task because we've got upstream, we've got downstream.
And are customers pushing for this? I mean, are the broadcasters or Sky or, are they phoning up going, we are only going to book you if?
I would say the maturity of RFPs coming out now, Serge was just saying about, people asking questions about greenwashing. So, we have to be true to ourselves and say, okay, we're looking at our emissions, but we need a reduction strategy to do that because we know, some of our...
How do you prove it? How do you issue a certificate to those customers? What do you do? How do you do it?
Well,
because you've started this process, haven't you?
At the moment it's really complex, and as a case in point, we look at business travel. So we've done this, alongside Albert with some of our clients, asking how people have travelled.
Right. Okay. So that's a measurable.
Yeah, but honestly, the feedback and people's engagement is really poor. And it's about everyone learning about, what we're going through.
So this is feedback from people you're employing and you're asking, how did you come to work?
Yeah, and people, there's not the engagement, and that's it's the depressing thing, but it's something I think as an industry we really have to work on.
So there's another education piece there, and this came up earlier.
1,000,000%, yeah.
So, I'm just thinking about if you're running a fleet of OB trucks and the services that go around it, you've got people not going as much to site or ride sharing or getting the train, that's an obvious one. I mean, fuel in your OB truck, they're big trucks, they use a lot of fuel. I mean, that must be something you can do something about.
Yeah, well, both us and NEP, in the UK, we've transitioned to HVO fuel, but you try to do it here in countries, mainland Europe, and there's a surcharge on HVO fuel. It's above the cost of diesel. So in this climate, how do we push those sort of incentives where we're not getting the support?
I think Eirik, you were nodding away there. I thought you perhaps might not want EMG to speak for you. So.
No, it's exactly the same. We see the requests coming via RFPs, and we see them from.
So you're getting pressure from customers.
Absolutely, and you need to prove like.
Any customers you want to tell us about? Who are they?
Sorry.
Which customers?
well, public broadcasters are quite clear on their requirements.
Yep.
But also what we see is that production companies they are now they need to prove what carbon footprint there is on the
because there's legislation coming, right? So this year, next year, if I think I'm right here, correct me if I'm wrong, there's 2 pieces of EU legislation. The first one is, I wrote this down, the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive.
CSRD.
Okay, thank you. And there's the EU supply chain law. There's already a version in Germany, the Lieferkettengesetz, I think. Yep. But it's not as good as the EU one's going to be, apparently. But this is going to. What sort of pressures does this now put on companies? If you have to do accounts every year. You have to get an accounting firm to come in and certify your accounts. I mean, is that what's now going to happen to your supply chain? So you're going to have to say this much carbon and. No employees took us to court this year, and because it isn't just about carbon, is it? Some of these things are about employee relations and diversity and so on. you're going to have to report on this.
Yeah.
That's pretty serious stuff. It's going to force you to do something, isn't it?
Well, that's why that's my job now. So, because ESG is a big part of, it's becoming a larger part of the industry. People are really focused on it, and the clients are focused on it. It's good that, suppliers are focused on it as well. And it's a journey that everyone's on. And, you have to get on board. That's what I would say.
Are there going to be trade-offs anywhere here? Are we going to have to sacrifice one thing to get another? So are we going to have to say, I'll have a bit more latency for a bit less carbon? I mean, does it come down to any of this anywhere? Anshul, you're nodding.
Yeah, I mean, but look, or not, it's very clear on this panel also, not all workloads, everything is equal in some ways, right? So it's not everything needs to work in a low latency environment at the same time. But currently at Google, so now you could, at Google Cloud, and other clouds are available, but we have...
Thank you, doing my job.
Alongside, when you're choosing to run a project for simplicity's sake, you can choose it to run on where the cheapest location is, you can choose it to run on lowest latency, and now you can actually choose it to run on the lowest carbon footprint at that time.
So these are choices.
So as a customer, you can choose to do that, and yes, it will apply for some workloads, but it will not apply where you need low latency. So I think, but if you, and this is something we have released quite some time ago, and now you see customers actually making that choice because it's available to do that.
See, I also wonder if there's an issue with a lot of wastage here as well, because we talk about wastage in every other sense, whether it's energy wastage, we recycle things and so on. And you don't hear people talk about it much, but I think data wastage is interesting because the person who's using it isn't the person paying the cost for it. I mean, this is quite an old analogy, but I remember back in the days when any television researcher, when they were given a task by the producer, the first thing they would do is ring directory inquiries and go, have you got a telephone number for the Society of something? This is pre-internet, obviously. And so the television researchers would just kind of ask directory inquiries. They'd start ringing up a few societies. They'd start getting this information until the price of ringing directory inquiries got really, really expensive, and then they had to find some other ways of doing it. The people who are using this data are people playing around with AI. They're researchers looking for stuff. They're possibly people Fox Sport who are kind of thinking, I don't know where we've got this footage, I'll just have a look on YouTube for the afternoon, apparently, Anshul. There's a lot of data being used up here, playing around, testing, trying to work out what's working. We've probably got hundreds of companies across the world all testing out the same stuff, not talking to each other. Is this an issue? I mean, I'm seeing nodding all the way down the line here.
Maybe I'll start. Yeah, of course, this is an issue. Let me move a little bit in another direction, because I think not about sustainability like it's sustainability, it's efficiency. Yeah. So it means you have to think, because even that you can sell to the customer. Maybe now you are in a transformation process, you have to spend more money, but on the long run, because everything is more efficient, you will save money. Yeah. And I don't want to crunch numbers here, but I have one in my mind. In Germany, you know that the data centers are have more carbon footprint than the complete air traffic over Germany. Yeah. The data centers are only 45% in the media industry, which is doing this. 25% is network. Guess what? 30 minutes Netflix streaming is, how long can you drive a car for it? 6 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah? So you have to work on the efficiency. Yeah? If everything comes from green energy, okay, yeah, but cooling is also something you have to have in mind, yeah.
Yeah.
And these guys here are doing from let's say Google, Microsoft, blah blah blah, are doing an amazing job there. So, but on the other side, you have to have also the network. Yeah, if the distance is very wide, you will lose it, because every router, every switch, it's a server today. Yeah. So then we have this AI thing. Everybody's playing around. Yeah. I don't have the numbers what this costs, but on carbon, but this is amazingly high.
Because I was just going to say, Serge, that the cost, that when the user is using it, they're not aware of that cost, are they? I mean, just think about satellite connections for OBs and things. We were aware that every 5 minutes more of satellite is going to cost this. So kill the satellite link as soon as you're ready. Do we need to put a number in front of people?
But by the way, the problem is not only the usage. A server, if you don't use it 10 years, the production is higher from the carbon footprint from the waste as the usage of it.
I would expect that the system will take care of this. You were referring to the regulation that is coming up on us about sustainability reports, and in that you have also the carbon footprint. So at the end, everybody will go through that. And everybody will try to understand how can I reduce that footprint, and everybody will start to see where can I reduce that leakage or that waste, because somewhere somebody will understand it's my responsibility to reduce that type of waste.
Do we need to tax it somewhere to push that behaviour? You know, a tax per gigabyte, or I don't know. But normally we try and change societal behaviour with tax, don't we? I mean, I wonder if there's something we should do there.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we have to wait a few years to see how that carbon footprint analysis is being happening with all the companies, and then probably people will start seeing, well, there are some big issues, and if they don't get solved by themselves, then probably some local governments will have the great idea of finding out new taxes. Yeah.
Thomas?
Taxes is the, let's say, negative way, but maybe companies who are net zero or trying to be, maybe they get some benefits, lower taxes, something like that they have more motivation to do it. Because you know that media entertainment industry is also under pressure. Yeah? So if the competition saves something because they're not doing the transformation right now, so it's an issue for them.
As we come towards the end of this, we've covered a lot of ground. You've all got different perspectives. What can we agree on? What are some key words that is the way forward? And I'm thinking the first one we're probably going to start with is education. But what do you think? What are the headlines?
Yeah, I'd say that's really the first and probably one of the most important things.
Yeah.
Is that everyone's aware of their own impact, and everyone's aware of, you know, how a change in whether it's their personal or you know, as a company, you can change to actually become more efficient, to become more sustainable. That's a really, you know, and everyone, you know, we do one of our in-house trainings we do for carbon literacy. You're asked to do, I think it's on the World Wildlife Fund, you have to do in your own carbon emissions. And you go online and you have to put it in. And then you realise how much carbon you're using a day by just, whether that's commuting or what you choose to eat, all of those things. So it's really like, I think for me it's the education piece across the industry to try and work together to be more sustainable.
Maybe very short answer for me, 3 things, as you said, awareness, efficiency, and sharing resources. Not just buying them, having them, then and even not using them. Because what we also see, some of our customers have, let's say, 30%, 40% cloud workflows, but they have still the same equipment on-prem. So obviously they are not saving anything.
And I suppose the other word that comes out of this is sort of partnership, because if you're working up and down those supply chains, you know, you've really got to trust those suppliers that when you give that information, because you're passing that on to your customers. So there has to be a sense of partnership there. And I didn't expect we'd get to a single answer at the end of this in terms of whether cloud is green or grey. But actually, every task and job and project we do is a completely different shape, isn't it? You can't apply the resourcing used on a football match for a reality show or something like that. So in truth, there's probably not a simple answer anywhere here about whether we need this solution or that solution. It's all project dependent. Thank you very much for that. We've covered there the people aspects. I'd like to ask you in the room, we're going to use our Menti application again. We've got a poll question for you. I want you to consider your own situation. Here comes the QR code. consider your own situation when you look at this multiple choice question. It's going to ask you about what you would be prepared to sacrifice in order to reduce your carbon emissions. Okay, so more people are willing to sacrifice price to reduce their emissions. Some people are willing to sacrifice flexibility. That depends on your client. But none of the above. There's quite a few people who don't want to sacrifice anything. I think that's interesting. Anything the panel want to pick up on the fact that a reasonable percentage are not prepared to sacrifice anything? Is that to be expected?
I think one thing
It's a profit-making industry.
Yeah, I think one thing I would say is that along the points that he said that what we need right now, I think one thing I would say is measurement and like being transparent with information. A lot of people still don't know. To your point, the person who's creating the emissions is detached to the person who's actually paying for it in certain cases. So just the transparency, the measurement, being able to expose that data, and generally sunlight is always the best disinfectant, I think is going to help there.
People can't see the effect of their actions, can they? There's no connection between making choices about what you're going to do or process data, and you don't see an output, you don't see an outcome.
If you're given a choice between two flights that you're taking and it tells you right next to it how much is the CO2 emissions, everything else being same, I'm pretty sure most people will choose the lower CO2 emission one.
After they've chosen the lower price, presumably.
Yeah, but I think that's at least that choice should be there. It's there in some cases, not every.
Yeah, and I think, as you say, the understanding and creating kind of an environment where you can understand your actions, and that goes from choosing what type of production you actually go for, and what technology choices you do as a technology team in designing new solutions, down to how you evaluate your production after it's been performed and see how it went. So all these type of things will help on the awareness, at least on carbon footprint. Yeah.
There is one more thing worth noting from this. Only one person is prepared to sacrifice security. I wonder who it is. Okay. There's a white paper on EVS's use of AI. We were talking earlier about its uses in slow motion and super zoom and so on. More information at the stand, and a white paper, which I have to say I've read, and it's very, very interesting. And it's right there for you. Good, okay. So just finally, a round of applause to thank our panelists very much, please.